I'm Katie Peshik. I'm our Director of Communications here at Rose Community Foundation. Thank you so much for being here for our webinar, which is a donor update on the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Support Fund. We're thrilled to have a wonderful lineup of panelists who can be here to provide information about grants from the fund, as well as what's happening with the Afghan Evacuee effort here in Colorado. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Rose Community Foundation's President and CEO, Lindy Eichenbaum-Lent.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to have you with us and appreciative of our guest panelists and the insights they'll be sharing. Many of you on the call today contributed directly to the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Support Fund, and we are so thankful for your generosity. For those of you who may be new to Rose Community Foundation, we strive to advance inclusive, engaged, and equitable Greater Denver communities through values-driven philanthropy. We're proud of our longstanding support of and partnerships with local immigrant and refugee-serving organizations, including those represented by today's panelists. Our commitment to supporting efforts to build an inclusive and welcoming community for all newcomers is rooted in our organizational history and our values. And it is this desire to support a thriving and diverse region that inspired us to both host and contribute to the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Support Fund. We are very grateful for the opportunity to partner with Governor Polis and the state of Colorado to ensure there are resources for the organizations that are welcoming and providing support to Afghan newcomers. In just a few short months, the fund received more than $1.1 million in contributions from 445 compassionate Coloradans. Donors included foundations, corporations, donor-advised funds, and individuals from across the state. Every single gift was appreciated, and we are grateful to be joined today by people representing some of the larger contributions, including the Colorado Health Foundation, Bohemian Foundation, Betcher Foundation, Mortgage Family Foundation, Amazon, Comcast, and Delta Dental of Colorado Foundation. The Afghan evacuees who are settling in Colorado represent a tremendous asset and strength for our community. Continued contributions to the Afghan Evacuee Support Fund will ensure we can collectively respond to the evacuees' long-term needs to ensure they thrive in Colorado. Rose Community Foundation's commitment to serving newcomers in our community extends beyond a single country of origin, and we look forward to opportunities for continued partnership with each of you to ensure that Colorado continues to be a welcoming and inclusive place for all. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce Governor Jared Polis. We so appreciate the governor's leadership and partnership on this issue. Governor?
Looks like we had the governor and he dropped off. So I'm sure he's planning to rejoin us. In the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maria Torres, who can present a little bit about how the fund was used and distributed, and then we'll welcome the governor when he's able to join us. So Maria, if you can give us an overview of where the fund was spent.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, my name is Maria Torres, and I am a Community Impact Officer at Rose Community Foundation and one of the staff members supporting the fund efforts. I will be sharing to you today where the grants from the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Support Fund were made. There were three main bodies of work that the state wanted to support: resettlement agencies, legal services, and mental health services. For the resettlement agencies body of work, this was aimed to supporting resettlement agencies for the overall work that they do in support of Afghan refugees. There are 3 resettlement agencies in Colorado ECDC African Community Center of Denver, International Rescue Committee Denver, and Lutheran Family Services Rocky Mountains. And then 2 additional organizations that were granted temporary resettlement status to help support this particular effort: Jewish Family Service of Colorado and Project Worthmer. The legal services body of work provided funds to assist Afghan evacuees and their families with immigration legal services that help facilitate permanency in the United States. So things like affirmative asylum procedures. The 3 organizations that were supported through these dollars were Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Denver, International Rescue Committee Denver Afghan Paralegal Resource Center, and Rocky Mountain Immigrant Advocacy Network. In the mental health services category, the fund supported organizations that will be serving evacuees from Afghanistan and their families with culturally relevant mental health services to help address trauma and the stress of resettlement. Organizations supported through these dollars include Adams 12 5-star School District, APDC Center of Colorado, Aurora Mental Health Center, the Immigrant and Refugee Mental Health Program at Anschutz campus, Jewish Family Service of Colorado, Muslim Youth for Positive Impact, and the Trauma and Disaster Recovery Clinic at the University of Denver, Violence Free Colorado, and Women's Wilderness. I will now pass it back on to Sarah Kurz to either introduce the governor or get us started with the panel.
Thanks, Maria. The governor is still tied up for a little bit longer, so we will go ahead and do panel introductions, and then we'll welcome the governor whenever he's able to join us. I wanted to introduce myself first. I'm Sarah Kurz. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs here at Rose Community Foundation. And we're thrilled today to be joined by panelists who represent some of the organizations that Maria just walked through. So I'll let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into some questions. As Katie mentioned at the beginning, we welcome questions from participants at any time. We will have dedicated time to answer questions at the end of the call, but please feel free to submit them in the chat whenever they come up. So panelists, thank you so much for being here today. I'll start with Huma, because she's alphabetically first with her last name. So Huma Abadi, if you could introduce yourself, explain a little bit about your organization and how you serve Afghan evacuees, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Good, beautiful morning. My name is Huma Abadi. I'm the Executive Director for Muslim Youth for Positive Impact. I'm also a proud Afghan American who came to the US when I was 13 years old, following the loss of 5 male members of our family during the Soviet invasion. So Colorado's home. We came directly from Fort Collins, Colorado from Afghanistan, and then 2.5 years as a refugee in Pakistan. Sarah, I just want to extend my gratitude, first of all, to everyone who has been part of this initiative and has given so much. You know, we always say, like, in unity, truly we feel the power of community. So that power of community was so felt through this initiative and through impact. It's already making an impact, but to follow, you know, in weeks and months and the year to follow that, you know, the impact, the lives that it will change. So our focus, Muslim Youth Empowerment, Muslim Youth for Positive Impact is a youth empowerment organization, and our adoptive family program started about 3 years ago in a way for youth to have an opportunity to give back to their community. So we focus on assigning youth to refugee families and then training them and helping them, provide guidance to the families so that they can move to self-sufficiency. So we have culturally competent programming that focuses focuses on holistic programming, you know, and we really listen to the needs of the community. We're really blessed that we have a very strong volunteer base. We only have a few staff members that get paid for doing all the work that I'll describe in just a second. So we're grateful to have received the funding for the mental wellness program, and we're very excited for that. We also have other services that we provide, like as holistic. We say that all of these elements, when we serve and help the community, that will help them with their mental wellness, right? So we have a resource center in partnership with the Metropolitan North Denver Islamic Center in North Glen. We do food drives there. We also do food deliveries because a lot of the refugee families, they don't have transportation to come to the food drives. So we have a couple of heroes that are specific, you know, they will get a call. He got a call 2 days ago at 11 p.m. and he drove and dropped, you know, to the mosque and got the food there and dropped it off to the family. We have resource days where we provide services. We've provided like vaccine education services, vaccine clinics, vaccine buses. We bring some legal services and WIC programs and anything. And in addition, we have translators that speak Farsi and Pashto and Pashawi to be able to help fill out forms and such for them. The parents were really stressed out about their kiddos struggling at school. So we started a tutoring program and piloting it with a partnership with I Have a Dream Foundation. So we have 25 students who are having, you know, who have their reading buddies right now. We just started our refugee family mentorship, assigning kind of families to families and helping them feel that support. We also are now transitioning more of like from food drive and resource center to, you know, instead of giving them fish, but now teaching them how to fish. So we are transitioning in providing services for them to learn, skills to write resumes, put resumes together, interview skills, and then also helping them look for jobs and find jobs and to get that. So just having that feeling of safety, security, kids supported, food on the table really helps with the mental wellness for the refugees. And we hear, so many amazing stories. And I wish I had more time to share that, but I do want you to know you all are making such a big impact in their lives. And we're very appreciative and grateful for all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Huma. Before we introduce the rest of our panelists, we're fortunate to be joined by the governor. So I will turn it over to Governor Jared Polis. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Lindy, and the Rose Community Foundation, which really plays such a key role. And I'm really excited that Rose Community Foundation, all of you, are partners in our work to support our Afghan refugees. You know, our state has a long history of successfully welcoming and integrating refugees. And our goal of our administration is a Colorado for all, which means every Coloradan can thrive, whether their families have been here hundreds of years or they just arrived last week. We've launched a new American Office of New Americans, to be our key point on including stakeholders for inclusion and equity. We now do in-state tuition upon arrival for refugees. So there's minimize any gaps that are born out of economic differences between in-state and out-of-state tuition for refugees. We also work successfully with the legislature to codify the refugee program so that the resettlement program continues for the future. You know, welcoming our newcomers really showcases our American values in the best ways. But I'm so proud that since August, Colorado's welcomed over 2,200 Afghan refugees. And many folks fled because they had no other choice. They came to the United States, starting over, most with very little, many of them with family members still living in great uncertainty in Afghanistan. But there are so many great organizations in Colorado that work directly with refugees and immigrants. Our response is creative, community-wide, transitional housing. Before the arrival, I helped to go set up some of that, supported about 500 people at its peak. And we know that we also expect many more refugees coming forward. And that's why we created the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Support Fund, because there are many holes that only philanthropy can fill. And since launching in 2021, we've raised more than $1 million, I'm proud to say. And we distributed $1.1 million to 17 organizations that on the ground providing resources for the evacuees and for the immigrants. You're gonna hear a lot more about them. And thanks to Rose Community Foundation for being able to deploy these dollars. They're really helping everything from navigating life in a new country, the path to citizenship, connecting people who've uprooted their entire life with support, mental and physical health resources. We know that in Colorado, diversity makes us stronger, and our immigrant and refugee communities strengthen the very fabric of who we are. And we've come a long way. We've helped resettle a lot of people, but there's a lot more work to do, and we need your help. So thank you to everyone who's donated, to everyone who's considering donating or getting involved. This is really a statewide effort to successfully resettle our Afghan refugees, and I want to thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for your help. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Governor. We're honored to partner with you on this work and to have you join us today. I will pivot back to panelist introductions, and thank you all for sticking with us. I'll go next to Linda Foster from Jewish Family Services. Linda, do you want to share a little bit about your organization and how you support Afghan evacuees as they're arriving in our community?
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm Linda Foster. I'm President and CEO for Jewish Family Service of Colorado. And I too want to echo Huma and the governor in thanking all of you for supporting these efforts. We all really came together very quickly. You all supported us very quickly and supported our Afghan evacuees that we're all trying to help. We received, as was mentioned by Maria, funding for mental health services. And for more than 30 years, JFS has been a leader in refugee mental health, helping provide trauma-informed treatments to refugees. We've served over 200 refugees over the years. We're currently serving, as Maria mentioned, also as a temporary resettlement agency, working with CRISP. We're serving about 60 Afghans for resettlement. We have 37 total Afghans that we're serving with mental health counseling, with 26 being new arrivals, and 3 of those are attending a newcomer group that JFS is providing a therapist to facilitate at South High School. We right now have a wait list of about 10 referrals of Afghans, and our therapists are working hard to respond as quickly as possible to those referrals, and we're also trying very hard to hire another refugee mental health therapist, which is extremely challenging in today's world. Most referrals are coming from Denver Health Lowry Clinic, and I want to say that the partnerships that we formed as we serve these refugees have been amazing. We're also providing wraparound services, including but not limited to culturally appropriate food from our pantry, employment services. We're already placing several of the Afghans that we're serving in jobs. And as I mentioned, mental health counseling and much more. And I'll turn it over to others so there's time for us to spend more later. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you again for supporting our efforts.
Thanks, Linda. Next, we'll go to Meg Segaria Barrett for introductions about her agency and their work as it relates to this population.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Segaria Barrett. I'm the Integration Partnerships Coordinator for the Colorado Refugee Services Program. Linda just referred to us as CRISP. That's our acronym. We are the State Refugee Office, and we're located in the Colorado Department of Human Services. And so our main role here is that we kind of oversee, coordinate, lead resettlement at a state level. So we're not directly serving clients, but we're working with the agencies who are serving clients. In terms of this particular fund, which was really creative, incredible response to the needs, we were really kind of an advisor and a partner with Rose Community Foundation and the governor's office. So we helped a little bit with identifying some of the need areas, doing some outreach about the fund, kind of exploring and identifying prospective grantees, and then being a part of that selection and review process. And I will pass it over to another panelist.
Thanks so much, Meg. And next we have Jennifer Wilson from International Rescue Committee, Denver. And would love to hear a little bit more about IRC's role in this work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you to everyone on this call for your support. I can only echo the gratitude. I think it's incredible to see what happens in the state, not only in terms of partnerships and collaboration, but philanthropic support, policy support from our legislator, from the governor's office, from all the municipalities we work in. It's a pretty incredible place to be doing this work. And when I think about the scale and pace of what we saw unfold following the fall of Kabul, there's nowhere else I would want to be doing this work. I will share that the IRC, just very briefly, we've been around since 1933, and we started at the request of Albert Einstein when people were fleeing Nazi-occupied Europe. Certainly never thought that we would be sitting here in 2022 with operations in more than 40 countries around the world and in 28 US cities. We've been working in Colorado since 2016 as a refugee resettlement agency, but also as a community-based organization, providing a wide range of wraparound services to immigrants and displaced people, with the goal of helping them integrate and come to a place where they know that Colorado is home and they can realize their safety, rebuild their lives, gain control of their futures. So we were really fortunate through the Colorado Afghan Evacuee Fund to receive assistance for the Afghan Parolee Legal Resource Center. This allowed us to hire a dedicated staff attorney with expertise in asylum to respond to what was really a daunting task of trying to help approximately 1,000 people who had been admitted as Afghan parolees to find a path to safety. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but 2 years of humanitarian parole status does not equal safety for people who don't see a path to returning home. And we wanted to leverage this investment to make sure that we could provide high quality legal services, help prevent exploitation and abuse of people who are in vulnerable situations by providing legal pre-screenings, legal consultations with qualified providers, and then connections to legal representation, because we know many of these parolees will need to seek asylum, and their chances of actually winning asylum are 5 times greater if they have legal representation. So we are recruiting, training, and mentoring pro bono attorneys. We're organizing pro se asylum clinics where we provide guidance to people on how to prepare their applications and navigate asylum. We are training them to do well in their asylum interviews and helping them learn some tools they can use to cope with the impact of trauma or any recounting of histories that can be triggering. We're also providing individual case representation where needed, either in-house or through referrals to partners. Many of our incredible law firms in the community are stepping forward to help. And then we are making sure that all throughout people have dedicated access to language assistance. So we have Afghan staff who are native Dari and Pashto speakers, helping to ensure that there's interpretation and navigation support so people understand what their process looks like and what they can expect. So we're really, really grateful. There wouldn't be this capacity in absence of this investment. I'll leave it at that in the interest of the panel discussion, but just want to thank you really from the bottom of our hearts and on behalf of all the people that we serve.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I'll invite all the panelists to come on screen just so we can flow through the conversation for the next 20 minutes or so. And again, for folks joining us, thank you so much for supporting the fund, and please feel free to jump in the chat with questions. So I'll start with Meg for a little context setting. The governor mentioned that we've seen 2,200 Afghan evacuees come since August to Colorado. How many more are you expecting? And also within the 3 buckets of funding that the fund was able to support with resettlement agencies, mental health services, and legal services, can you talk a little bit about how those areas are connected and why they were prioritized for funding?
Sure. Yeah, so just a tiny bit of context on 2,200 arrivals in about the first half of this year. This is a huge, heavy lift. So last fiscal year here in Colorado, in the full fiscal year, we welcomed 450 newcomers. And so we welcomed 4.5 times as many people in about a 6-month period. So just really that kind of community-wide lift that everyone's referencing is very much true. At this point, we're anticipating about 100 more Afghan arrivals to Colorado this fiscal year. That number could go up or down a little bit, and then we'll continue to see Afghan arrivals through the conventional refugee resettlement process in the coming years. We don't have clarity yet precisely on those numbers. In terms of the 3 different grant areas, we start with the resettlement agencies because they're kind of the front line, right? They've been longstanding partners. They're picking people up at the airport. They know the needs, and so that's just a key investment area for us to be able to support the resettlement agencies. In terms of mental health, this was a new scenario in which we were welcoming people kind of directly from trauma and kind of in a very quick and emergency situation, differently than people who have fled home and kind of lived in a neighboring country for many years. And so we knew just in general that people would have really recent trauma, they would have families still in danger. And I think we just recognized in general the need for all refugees, but specifically this population, to really amplify those mental health services. So that was one area. Legal services, Jennifer just referred to this, is that humanitarian parole, about 2,000 of the 2,200 were welcomed using humanitarian parole. It's great. People were having access to safety and security kind of immediately, but that pathway to legal permanency here in the US just isn't there. And so there's this need for screening. There's this need for following the right pathway for each of these folks, whether it be asylum or some other methods. This is a huge lift. They'll talk more about what a big lift it is. And so just recognizing we needed to begin resourcing this. I think on our end, as the state, looking at both of these needs, specifically legal services and mental health, they're long-term things. These aren't things you kind of handle like that. Is that we need the investment of the community. The state needs to come alongside in this and invest in this ongoing mental health services people often seek after a period of time, after things are handled. These two things are connected too, because the legal precarious nature of people's situation is just one more stressor on top of the many stressors, right? Parenting in a new country, language adjustment, cultural adjustment, family still at risk. And so we see these as intertwined and want to kind of handle them in tandem, support people to feel more secure and then kind of begin building their lives here.
Thanks, Meg. I'd love to hear from the panelists a little bit more about what you're seeing as you're serving folks arriving from Afghanistan in terms of their safety and security needs. And I'll start with Linda with that question.
Our refugee mental health therapists and our team that are resettling Afghans haven't heard any immediate concerns from the newer Afghans about their physical safety or security or anything on racism or bigotry, but we've heard a lot from the evacuees about their feelings of financial insecurity and wanting to send money, as much money as possible, back to their relatives that are still in Afghanistan. And because many of them worked with the US military, they felt more financially secure in Afghanistan than they feel here until they're in jobs. They talk about feeling poor. They talk about the hardship of living financially differently than what they were accustomed to. And some broader considerations of safety and security for the newly arrived Afghans include that their legal status impacts their overall emotional sense of safety and security. Again, we mentioned many are focused on applying for asylum, and it's a long process. Some share that when they arrived in the US, their experiences at the military base were very difficult and caused more emotional distress and safety concerns. They have concerns for the safety of their family members and friends who remain in Afghanistan. And those Afghans who have been here for a while have experienced feeling targeted and are afraid to report to the police because they talk about how their experience in Afghanistan was not very good with the police. So they're frightened to report anything here.
Thanks for that perspective, Linda. Does anyone else want to jump in on this question, or should I move on to the next one?
I can just quickly, if that's all right. Just last week, we had a couple sessions with a few parents. We actually, like Meg said earlier, parents are really stressed about parenting here. Like, how do you don't even know the language, right? Your kiddos bring home papers that you don't know what it says, right? And they're struggling. So that's been, on top of their mind. So we're doing like parenting sessions with the, in Farsi, we have a parenting coach who speaks Dari and Pashto. So we had our first one and we have our next one here on June 4th. And so a lot of the parents shared that their kiddos are getting bullied in school. And so they don't feel safe. Some of the girls, they didn't want to go to school because of that. And they had like, they're pulling off their hijabs off of their head, the kiddos. So for kiddos, it might be another level of, not feeling safe in all the environments. So, that's something that has come up. I just wanted to share.
Well, we're so fortunate to have your perspective, not just running MyPie, but also as an Afghan refugee yourself. Would love to hear your perspective on what you wish people understood about folks arriving from Afghanistan that they may not now?
Thank you for asking that. That's actually one of my favorite things when people ask. It's like these individuals, they're hardworking. Like Linda said, they were working, they had great jobs, they had great livelihoods, right? They had beautiful houses, much bigger and much better than my house, and probably a lot of our homes. But and that's, they came here for opportunity. And some of them, like the governor said, they were forced to leave because of this, the situation that was, that happened, and the safety issues that they had. So a lot of them, it's great for the community to know, to believe in them, right? They're hardworking individuals, and given the opportunities and the time, they will become contributors to our communities. They will become, executive directors of nonprofits that they, I don't know, just, but they will, given, and really saying another thing, like investing in that unity, right? Learning about their culture, about their religion, and some of the history of what they had gone through, and sometimes just listening and just saying, "Chotorasti," like, how are you? And then let them speak, even if you don't understand the language, and just, listening. It does, it makes a big impact. So really, like Lindy said at the beginning as well, like welcoming and creating a place of inclusiveness, right, for them. And like I said, in Unity, we feel the power of community. So let them be part of the community. Let them feel home, even though they're away from home. It's, but at the deep of it, like, also that they're not just takers. Like, Afghans love to give back. So, and I know some of you who have been working, like, they can't give much else right now because, like Linda said, they feel poor. They don't know what else to give, but they'll at least bring you their food plate of rice and beans, which a lot of them are having right now. That's like the most common dish right now, because it's hard access to get meat for them. But yeah, they'll cook for you. They'll bring you their food. So they're not just takers. It's just the circumstances have put them in a place where they need right now, but they will be able to give back if we support them and be there for them.
And you're certainly a testament to that yourself. Others on the call, are there things you wish folks better understood about incoming arrivals from Afghanistan? Linda?
I just want to follow up on what Huma said about, this is what we're finding is the fiercely independent culture too, with a lot of pride. And it's complicated because in one hand, we want to show how to do certain things. For example, how to put on the heat and do things around the house. But they're very independent, and you have to respect that because that independence is actually remarkable. And they want to do things. They want to drive. They want to have a car. They want to have their independence. And that it's very tough not to be able to have that, especially when they were accustomed to that. They want to be able to be in the know. They want to have TVs and I know it sounds like that's a luxury, but it's not, because they want to have the information. They want to be part of the American culture. And, and TVs are not something that we all give out right off the bat, and we try very hard to provide them. So that's just an example of this independence, and also this wanting to gain the knowledge and really wanting to adjust. And there's so much to adjust to in living in a new country. So I think that's really important. They're also, as Huma said, they want to entertain. They're used to having people to their homes. And so what they're asking for in terms of material goods are really not so much that they need and they want. It's part of their lifestyle.
Thank you for sharing that. Jennifer?
Can I just add to, I think I would echo all of the sentiments around having a really strong sense of agency, being able to provide, bringing lots of assets, and really wanting to build community. The ways that people want to contribute are many. We've had very recently arrived Afghan parolees step forward and say, let us help you set up housing for new arrivals. When the fires happened outside Boulder, they like, what can we do? This is our new community. And I do see this really active effort to embrace the community that they're coming into, which is, I think, just indicative of how much they are connected to how we live, not just here in Colorado, but also in the United States. You know, the ideals of freedom and democracy, so many of them worked diligently day in and day out without any R&R, without any breaks, without any home leave to support those ideals in their country and to support the US mission and really build Afghanistan into what they hoped it would become. And they put their lives on the line, and they suffered persecution as a result, and they're in danger as a result. So I think it's just really important to remember that sometimes when we see what can read as impatience, it's this feeling of like, in some ways I'm already part of this country, and so now I just need these barriers to come down so I can move forward. And it's, I think, really impressive and a challenge to respond to with this kind of impatience and time, this lack of tolerance for the time it can take. But I know I can't agree more with you, Huma, that, you know, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, the ways that we'll see this group of Afghans coming into our community contributing will be really incredible.
Thanks for all of that. Jennifer, can you speak a little bit more about the legal pathways that folks coming in from Afghanistan in this latest wave? What are the pathways to residency? What are the challenges to that?
Yes, I'd be happy to speak to that. And Meg touched on this as well. But basically, the reality is that coming in as an Afghan parolee, being granted humanitarian parole, there isn't a pathway to legal residence that's built into that. It is a temporary status. It does come with work authorization. It has the potential to be renewed. But as a humanitarian parolee, there's no way, even if you've been here 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if you're able to extend and extend and extend, there's no way to become a lawful permanent resident or attain citizenship. So for the group of humanitarian parolees that has come in, now 2,200 people, about 2,000 of them needing legal assistance, the task has been to really understand then, if you do feel that long-term, you're not going to be able to return home safely, and that's true for most all of them, then what are those options? Some of them may have a special immigrant visa application in process already. It's a very convoluted process that took many years, lots of bottlenecks. But if there is hope of pursuing that, we may work with them on that application. Some will have a family relationship. Maybe their spouse was already here, already had lawful permanent residency, or was already a US citizen, where we can look at a family-based adjustment of status. But the vast majority, if they do want to stay here, the only option at present would be pursuing asylum. And that would be through the affirmative asylum system in front of US Citizenship and Immigration Services. They're fortunate in the sense that there was legislation that was passed and signed into law by President Biden at the tail end of last federal fiscal year that allowed for expedited processing of these asylum applications. Normally, if you apply for affirmative asylum, you could be waiting for years and years and years. But what we're looking at now is from the time people apply until they have a decision on their case, it's likely to be around 6 to 8 months versus several years. So that is a very good thing. But again, it's imperative that they have legal representation. There is nothing straightforward about the immigration legal system in this country. So I think it's a huge task and one we're very happy to take on. And also are really grateful for Rocky Mountain Immigrant Advocacy Network and Catholic Charities leaning in to do this work. Between the three of our organizations, trying to serve 2,000 people is massive. And I think we're all bringing forward tremendous creativity, but also want to thank Muslim Youth for Positive Impact and Jewish Family Services and all of the grantees in working with mental health, because legal and mental health have this really fascinating interplay, where you have to feel like you're working toward legal safety to be able to engage in mental health services, but you also need to have tools and strategies to cope with trauma and stress to be able to engage in the legal process effectively. So it's, I think, a really great pairing in terms of supporting people as they pursue safety.
Thanks for that. And I think Linda also spoke earlier to some of the collaboration that's happening across grantee partners who are all serving this population and understand the value of that whole ecosystem. So we're really fortunate to have been able to support a lot of you. Meg, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. I think something that there have been some really kind of silver linings in some ways in terms of community response, national response to supporting Afghans. So for example, the expedited processing that Jennifer was referencing. One of the downsides of this, or the challenge of this, is the other people seeking asylum in the United States, right? So United States Citizenship and Immigration Services is processing these applications. So it's fabulous and really helpful for Afghans to be expedited, but you also have people who are years in the waiting for their cases to be adjudicated. So there's kind of two sides to this that's been challenging. Is yes, we want to support Afghans, and who may lose or who may wait longer as a result of that. And so there's a kind of a tension in that system for not having a kind of broad-based adjustment opportunity for Afghan humanitarian parolees. So just something to kind of think about is that it's a new challenge in an already very challenged immigration system.
Can I add to just one thing, Meg? I'm so glad you raised that, because it's also an area where in our community historically services have been under-resourced in a huge way for asylum seekers. So not only was it just daunting in terms of the scale of Afghans coming in, but we were already in situations, those of us who provide asylum representation, of having long wait lists for people who needed services and just chronically facing insufficient capacity. So I think it's wonderful to be building this capacity, and we're really excited to think about ways that we might be able to sustain this at some level to then meet those needs on an ongoing basis in our community.
And I just wanted to ask Jennifer, my understanding is that the evacuees have to be in English of second language classes and making progress in order for the legal case to move forward. And I just wondered if that's what I've heard is true.
No, it's helpful. It certainly helps, but no, it is not required that you are acquiring English language skills. That can be helpful when it comes time to adjust status, and certainly by the time you pursue citizenship. So if you are an Afghan parolee and you apply for asylum, you're granted asylum, you then have 1 year before you can apply for permanent residency or pursue a green card. And then 5 years from your date of asylum, you can apply for naturalization to pursue citizenship. At that point, you have to pass the kind of infamous, at least in our circles, citizenship test that does require a pretty high level of English and very deep understanding of US government and civics, often beyond what people who are born here are able to master or have mastered, I guess I should say. So it is not required that you speak English or that you're taking English classes to be granted asylum, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
We have a question in the chat I'll pivot to now and encourage others on the call to submit questions there. This is from Katie Kramer with the Betcher Foundation. She says that some refugees have reached out to them hoping to continue their college education that was disrupted when they came to the US. So any advice the panelists have about how to connect folks with those supports or resources? You can always follow up offline too. We need to do little things to answer
it a little bit. I'm sorry to jump in again. I know I just spoke quite a bit, but I think it's a great question, Katie. You know, it's challenging in resettlement, and I think Huma spoke to this too, that there is this kind of timeline for getting into employment and pursuing self-sufficiency. The resources that are provided don't stretch very far for people to get on their feet. And the whole US refugee resettlement system is premised on people achieving early self-sufficiency. With that premise, we allow people from all walks of life to come to the country if they have a bona fide refugee claim. And similarly with Afghan parolees, you know, we're not so-called cherry picking people who have certain skills or certain experience. We're really looking at, you know, what have they experienced and do they meet the criteria to access protection in our country? But we're only able to do that in that way because we really emphasize self-sufficiency. So I think one of the best pieces of advice that you can share is that many people who come here as refugees or who are displaced do continue their education. And the way that they do that is in doing what a lot of people who are born here do, which is to balance that with their need to provide for themselves economically in the meantime. So there are certainly scholarships and resources out there. They're not necessarily abundant. but there are resources that people can tap into, and they're probably going to have to work and go to school at the same time unless someone else is able to work and provide for them. But if they are looking at enrolling in one of our institutions of higher education, we do have a bill that allowed in-state tuition to refugees and special immigrant visa holders. And I believe, Meg, perhaps you can check me on this. I think it's now been expanded, or we're in the process of expanding it to cover Afghan humanitarian parolees as well, which would allow them to enroll at in-state tuition rates without having to wait for 1 year to establish residency.
We had gotten some legal review on that bill. The way the bill was written did not appear that you could extend that in-state tuition to humanitarian parolees.
Okay.
It's the kind of thing we could assess again. I can't remember if it was Attorney General's office or who it was, but the answer in the near term was that that in-state tuition couldn't be extended to humanitarian parolees, but it's the kind of thing we could get another set of eyes or revisit, because it was a scenario we didn't expect. We didn't expect that we would be serving 2,000 plus. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, after this, I'm on a meeting to set our legislative agenda for the next General Assembly session. So we'll put that at the top of the list, barring some.
Kuma, were you going to add something?
Yeah, just I'll try to be quick, but thank you so much, Katie, for that question. And Afghan, the Afghan evacuees, and they're very resilient, right? They want, and they'll be also very persistent. One thing that we are trying to do as they come and they want like opportunities right away, right? And some of them don't speak English and they want to work at an office, or so it's like, so we also pair them with mentors, with other individuals who have come and have been here 5 years or 6 years or 10 years, and then to see what courses they took. So like they have role models to say like, it's okay, you're going to get there, right? We'll get you there. And then in the process, like we're having those mentors actually put like goals for them. Also, as the next transition, if it helps, like I would love to be connected with them as well. We have some training right now. We're doing a Python class there was a lot of IT folks that came in that they wanted to just kind of brush up the skills and to see how they can apply it here. So we started a Python class that they're taking, and then with those skills they can go apply for jobs. So we'll be starting a few other programs like that, and we also look at the needs of the community to see what classes are needed, and so we have some support to be able to kind of kick off some programs to help individuals who are so hungry and thirsty for knowledge and for that continuation of their education to be able to at least feel like they're moving towards it in a way, and they're very hardworking, where they will work and they really want to do their further their education. So if anybody would like to connect, I know we'll probably be able to I don't know, Sarah, do they have our email addresses?
Feel free to use Rose Community Foundation as a liaison for questions, and we will be happy to try to facilitate getting answers and make introductions to the grant. So we, just looking at the clock, want to pause for a second. Please continue to submit questions. If we aren't able to get to them all today, we're happy to follow up in email. And we will be sharing this recording on our blog, and happy to take questions there for any follow-up. I want to pause for just a moment and invite my colleague Tejas Iyer to join us. I think we've heard today about both the immediate needs of folks who arrive in our community, but how the real goal is for them to have a sense of permanency and safety and security here. So the needs are not ending. We're so glad that we were able to respond quickly thanks to the supporters of the fund, but the needs do continue. So Tejas is going to speak briefly about how interested donors and funding partners might support this work in an ongoing way. Tejas, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. My name is Tejas Iyer, and I'm the Donor and Fund Services Associate at Rose Community Foundation. We are going to turn to audience questions in a moment, but for those of you on the call who are interested in supporting future needs around Afghan refugees, there are a few ways you can get involved. Colorado's Afghan Evacuee Support Fund is still accepting donations at Rose Community Foundation. And in the months ahead, the fund will continue to make grants to organizations providing mental health, legal services, and other core resettlement functions. Please also consider supporting organizations that have received grants out of the fund directly, including those whom you have heard from today. These organizations that are listed on the slide and are also going to be featured in a blog post that we will link to in the chat. And as Lindy mentioned, Rose Community Foundation's commitment to immigrants and refugees is inclusive of all newcomers. And we've been pleased to help our donors direct grants to organizations welcoming people from all over the world, including a recent donor guide to supporting those fleeing Ukraine. We will also share a link to this guide in the chat. And if you need any additional information, our team at Rose Community Foundation is available to support resources and support you on your giving. So please reach out to us anytime. And with the remaining time with questions for our panelists, I will turn it back to Sarah Kurz to facilitate those. Thank you.
Thanks, Tejas. We'll switch to a couple more questions before time runs out. We received one asking if WHOMIS Group specifically has English language tutoring resources for Afghan refugees who are not already involved with the group. And if so, how do folks connect with those? And maybe a broader question about other areas for English language tutoring for folks coming in from Afghanistan or potentially other refugee populations as well.
Thank you for your question, John. Appreciate it. We've had like formal ESL classes, and those are something part of this transition. We will be launching again in July. It is open to all refugees, so they can just go to mypipe.org, or Sarah will they'll provide the connections and contacts. Everybody's welcome, and we do have like individual programs as well. Our main tutoring program is for the younger kiddos in elementary and middle school, but certainly I would love to connect and be able to comment more.
Thanks, John. We can make that introduction. Meg, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I can just chime in too. So the State Refugee Office resources a number of ESL providers as well. So I can drop our website in the chat, and we've got a services for refugees section, and then there's an ESL providers or English language providers kind of section. These are some of the providers that we're resourcing. There's also lots of other community colleges, Denver Public Library, a lot of different kinds of partners and places where you can find ESL classes.
Thanks. So in our final minutes, I think we all came together around this work because there was a population that we knew would be coming in really significant numbers to the Denver metro area. And many of us were watching the news and seeing the devastation in Afghanistan and were compelled to help. But for Rose Community Foundation, for the governor, for the folks on the call, and really for all of the grantees, our work is not limited to the Afghan population, and our desire to make sure that our community is welcoming to newcomers is very broad and inclusive. So would love final words from each of the panelists about how folks on the call and donors can support refugees and evacuees from all over the world and stay involved in these issues. I'll start with Linda. Quick round robin.
There's so many ways to support. Obviously, continuing the financial support. There's issues with interpretation. Interpretation costs around the country have gone up 40%, and interpreters are not so easy to find, especially for Afghans, but in general. We also finding housing. That's the number one, I would say. For any refugee coming to Colorado, finding housing in this market is incredibly challenging, and any help anyone can give around housing would be really, really appreciated from all of us. The other is if Ukrainians are coming, for example, we need sponsors. They have to be sponsored. So it's one other way that people can help. Helping with providing, as Jennifer was talking about, providing pro bono legal services. If you are willing to help and you have the legal background, volunteering to help. As Huma said, we so depend on volunteers. So helping to drive to appointments, refugees to appointments, helping with cultural mentoring, things like that.
Thanks, Linda. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Yes, I couldn't underscore the importance of housing more, just for people's stability and their ability to start to access services and get connected to community. I think also just generally being welcoming and helping to educate others in your circles about why people are here and the ways that they can be welcoming. In addition to thinking beyond, I think this incredible investment was very badly needed for this unprecedented crisis, and we will see Afghans and many others continuing to arrive for years and decades to come. So I'm thinking about other ways to support more broadly and help to lift up this incredible community of welcome and opportunity for those who are rebuilding their lives are all things that I would recommend. And if the Afghan Adjustment Act comes up again in Congress and you're so inclined to advocate with your congressional representatives, we would greatly appreciate that too.
Thank you for that. Uma?
Thank you. And just to say, you know, everyone that's here, they've already made such a huge impact, and you're all the ambassadors of impact. And thank you all so much. And I always say, if you want to help out more, there's thoughts like just thinking about them being there and, you know, being welcoming, and then time. If you want to volunteer and give your time there, I know all of our organizations, we love volunteers. So connect with us, whether you want to be a mentor to a family or a sponsor, like financially a family per month. And we always say to say if you save one life, it's as if you have saved all of humanity, you know. So it's like you want to help out one family, you can do that. And also, so like our colleague said, and the incredible work that they do, is, you know, the big things right now: housing, jobs is huge to helping them get to that self-sufficiency. If there are some skills that you have that you want to teach, connect with you know, with any of the organizations, and also transportation. If you have a car, these families need cars. If you want to give someone a ride, they do need rides. If, you know, and if you have like a big bus van for some reason, you can offer that. So there's a lot of opportunities to help, and we appreciate you all, and you know, and for all that you've done, and we thank you. So.
Meg, do you have anything to add? We're right at 10 o'clock.
I spend a lot of time with the members of the Colorado Refugee Speakers Bureau. And one of the things that everyone says at the end of the day is they say, love us, care about us. People want that feeling of belonging. And so I think just in addition to all of the practical ways to help is extending that care.
Thank you. What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate our panelists for the work you're doing, most importantly, and for joining us this morning. Appreciate all the contributors to the fund and those of you who are helping in other ways. Rose Community Foundation is proud to be a partner and a connector in this work, but it's because of all of you that it's possible. So thank you all for being here, and please be in touch if there's anything we can do to help connect you. Bye.